parts of the region. But I have consistently heard this concern about the economic component and the cost component.
We will have to sweep our streets twice a year, so we don't put sand down.
Right.
So it's basically, it'll be a wasted effort, but we will need to do that to be in compliance with the contract.
I have met with the EPA both in New Hampshire and in Washington on several of these issues. And my hope and my goal is to try to find a sort of an agreement, because a lot of these things that you're referencing are rules. So there's really two ways. There's two ways to address that from Washington: either file legislation to amend what action has been taken by the agency, or sit down with the agency, sit down with the community, and try to find a common, reasonable solution to the issue. One of the things that I did do in our Oversight and Government Reform Committee, we had EPA administrator in front of us and representatives from the EPA. And one question that I did ask that I think is a very important issue is, when making decisions on rules and implementing rules on communities, particularly small communities, do you consider the economic impact? And essentially the answer was no, and that they feel that that's not their responsibility or concern to address the economic impact. Now, I would encourage the EPA to consider those impacts, not just on large communities, but small communities. I really believe that has got to be part of the long-term solution, and the things that they would like to see solved. And we're having that debate. I think it's going to be an ongoing debate, quite frankly, because they feel very strongly that they should not be considering it. I have a different view. I think that has to be a consideration, because the money's got to come from somewhere. And I know that not just the federal level is strapped, but the state level. The state is having its financial challenges, and local communities are having a challenge. So I think that the hope is, how do we find that common ground where we can have that agreement where the community is comfortable and the EPA is comfortable with what they're trying to achieve. Yes, sir.
The Center for Medicare Services in Hingham, Massachusetts sends me a quarterly statement, and it says, please look for any fraud and report it. And check everyone, there's no fraud. But then Medicare Part B, which is more run by the corporations, the pharmaceutical companies, sends out a quarterly statement, of which I have one right here, in which they tell me that an over-the-counter cholesterol-reducing medication, 90-day supply, is Humana paid $63.58. That same 90-day supply costs $10 at Walmart. The effect of that is it drives me right into the donut hole real quick. So Humana gets out of paying anything. So if that isn't fraud, I don't know what it is. And when we examine the back of the statement, it says, oh, if there are any complaints or any problems, here's a number you can call. They never once use the word fraud on their statement.
If you would be willing, and I don't mind if you'd be willing to,
I'll be glad to provide data
to provide me a copy of it, because I'd be happy to look into it and see if there's something we can try to address.
Right.
Of course, keep it confidential.
Thank you.
But it doesn't make sense. I mean, look, I think you should have the flexibility. First of all, you can find it cheaper. You should be able to purchase it cheaper from.
In fact, I'm going to get a new prescription from my doctor to specifically take that to Walmart to get that one there.
Yeah. Now, you shouldn't have to be put in that position in the first place.
Right.
So that's the issue that we should try to address. If I can get a copy of it, if you want to mail it to my office, or I'll make a copy here, and I can pay for it.
I'll mail it to your little office.
But yeah, and I'll address it. Make sure you have your contact information that you want me to contact you back, and I'll get back to you inside of 30 days and try to see if we can fix that for you. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that the Ways and Means Committee is going to come out with a bipartisan plan. It's going to close some loopholes which will increase revenue. I'm referring back now to the debate in Iowa last week, when all 8 candidates said that they would reject a 10-to-1 deal when the new super committee comes out. Would you reject a 10-to-1 deal?
Well, 10-to-1 deal meaning $10 of cuts?
10 parts of spending reductions
for
one part of revenue enhancement.
Yeah.
And I understood that all 8 stood up there and held up their hand and said no deal. And I'm wondering how you would responded.
I watched most of the debate. I have to admit, I fell asleep at about a 30-minute portion of it.
It's been in the newspaper.
No, I'm aware of it. I didn't see it firsthand.
No,
But I am aware of it. I happened to catch it, a couple days later.
Yeah.
Here's how I answer that question. I don't feel that we need to raise rates, but I do think we can raise revenue. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we need to have spending reductions.
Why not raise? What's wrong with raise?
How do you raise revenue?
I think the way you raise revenue, I mean, my personal feeling is that, look, the government gets about $2.2 trillion in revenue today. We're spending about $3.7 trillion. The way I have always tried to manage a small business or a city is to match your expenditure with your revenue. And I don't feel that raising taxes has to be the first option. I think that there are many other options and alternatives before you raise tax rates. Now, what I feel is that it can be regressive to raise taxes on a small business owner, particularly here in New Hampshire, when 75% of our economy is driven here in New Hampshire by small business.
How about General Motors? $50,000. It's only the first dollar. How about the beginning of the bracket?
What I'd prefer to see is an opportunity where we get, a high percentage of those individuals who are out of work back to work. That in and of itself will reduce expenses on the federal side and increase revenue. But I also think that there's got to be a different environment, legislative environment coming out of Washington that will allow our job creators in our country to utilize the dollars that they have at their fingertips. Now, again, maybe you have a different perspective. I respect that. But I feel that that is a far better way to generate the long-term revenue stream that we need while we're managing our expenses.
In the meantime, we need help. Most small businesses are never even in the bracket of which we speak. They never reach that.
Okay.
And when they do, it's only the first dollar above $250,000 that is taxed at the higher rate. So it is really very misleading when you say our small businesses need to be protected. They already are, because 80–90% of them never even have taxable income at the rate we're talking about. So it is really very misleading, and I'm really sick of hearing this misleading stuff.
Did you mention GE?
Yes, I did.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to ask your comment.
How come GE
Sure.
effectively pays less than zero taxes, actually gets a refund under the laws?
I'll tell you exactly why. And this is the problem with the tax code. Over a long period of time, this didn't happen in the last 2 years, this happened over a long period of time, there are...
So it wasn't Barack Obama's fault then, was it?
No, I never said it was. I mean, over a long period of time, we have had insertions
Long
into the...
period of time. More than 2.5 years, right? Well, like 15, 20?
It's actually been longer than that. I mean, you've had... Look, there have been mistakes made in the past by both parties in terms of expenditures and being irresponsible about insertions into the tax code.
Lack of compromise right now is pretty irresponsible, isn't it?
I can get to that, and let me answer the GE particular issue that you have. The question was, why didn't they pay taxes this year? So in the tax code, they took advantage of something that was inserted by members of Congress years ago that allows them to carry forward losses over a 6-year period, which allowed them to pay zero in taxes. That is exactly the example that I used in an op-ed that I wrote in the, it was placed in a number of papers, but certainly in the statewide paper, the Union Leader, and I specifically pointed to that and said that's what has to be eliminated. That's what's unfair about our code on the corporate side. And that's what elicits anger and frustration from people, because the tax code is treating different companies differently. I don't think any of us feel that that's fair. And I support the notion of eliminating those inequities in the code, and I specifically identified that one in the op-ed that I wrote about a month, maybe 6 weeks ago. So, and there is.
I'll have to reread that.
If you'd like, I can mail it to you. if you want to give us your email or your address, and I'll mail the op-ed to you.
You have it already. I'll check it with you.
But that is really part of, I think, the fundamental challenge that we have. And I believe that in a bipartisan way, the House Ways and Means Committee will address those particular loopholes. Yes, sir.
Oh, me? Okay. I guess I'd like to ask you about your own glossy mailer and the management of your office. First of all, I guess your telephone town halls, which have been very successful. Maybe you wish you were at one of those instead of one of these.
Actually, I prefer these.
Okay.
I prefer
They're
back
paid for by a company called Citizens Dialogue LLC, which is a Republican political consulting firm based in Virginia.
Well, they're not paid. No, they're not paid for.
And they're paid. I mean,
that's the group that
you pay too.
That's the group that organizes.
Yes, and they do. You paid $3,200 just for the telephone town halls in the first quarter, which probably, and that's fine. But they also do direct mail pieces similar to you sent at least 2 glossy direct mail pieces that look at least at first glance like campaign mailers.
How much does that cost?
And how much does it cost? And are they the vendor? And if not, who? And if it's not a New Hampshire vendor, why did you choose not to have them printed and designed by a New Hampshire printing firm, which they're separate?
And why do they look like a campaign folder, like the one that's right behind you? I got that folder in the mail last week. Look at that one right there. Compare the two. Glossy. How much did that cost? Listening to you. That's a campaign slogan, Congressman. And your franking money is paying for it. You talk about waste. There's waste right there. What I want from you is a black and white or a one-color document that's just print, one small picture of you and no slogans. And you also should publish how much money you're spending on those things. You should put it on your website. And you should also broadcast these town halls more than one day on your website. This Greenland site did not show up until today. I checked on my email, I checked on my website. Congressman Guinta talked about your town hall in Manchester coming tomorrow,
I'm sorry,
August 10th. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Our nation's crisis and people are unemployed.
So today, yesterday, no Greenland town hall there. This morning, how many people have the time? I mean, unless they actually go on there and they're looking for it. I mean, if you're really going to be transparent, then you should be broadcasting these things way
everyone's got a right to be here, and I want everyone who's here to have an opportunity to give their opinion. So let's just try to respect everyone's time.
So let's go back to the cost on the gloss. Let's focus on that one first, because that one you talk about waste. Let's talk about how much it costs and how much we could save if you did not send those kind of flyers out.
Here's what we did. Every member of Congress, Republican and Democrat, has a budget that they're responsible for. We, in January, cut our budget, and then we just cut it again within the last month.
Doesn't explain why you use a glossy campaign flyer. Why do you do that? Tell me why. Why do you do that?
Problems in this country, my friend, okay?
I'd be happy to finish.
Yes, we do.
Let's talk about that.
Asking why he didn't start something small level printer to print it.
So within that budget, I've got to decide how we're going to spend those dollars. One of the goals I have is to not spend the entire budget and return not to the Treasury but to deficit reduction, any unused dollars in my budget, as well as, and I'm encouraging every member of Congress to do the same.
Would black and white be cheaper than the glossy?
I can find out for you. I can find out.
I think common sense would say probably it's cheaper.
All of, just for informational purposes, these have got to be approved. They go out. It's a form of communication to try to communicate to what is going on. I also do the telephone town halls when I'm not in New Hampshire. When I'm
I just want to talk about the franking.
I know, but someone asked about the telephone town.